Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we're going to be talking about some new comments from Elon Musk on Tesla's stance on advertising. We've also got a couple of pieces of news on supercharging, including one of the first data points on supercharging for the new Model S, which is really interesting. Then some news from GM, Toyota, and Waymo. Bumpy road for Tesla stock throughout the day today, but did finish up about 0.9% to $604.87. That compared to the Nasdaq down 0.25%. Remember, the markets today closely watching for updates from the Federal Reserve following their meeting. A couple of the main takeaways from that: it looks like the expectations in terms of timing of a possible rate increase have moved forward a little bit. 13 of 18 officials expected at least one rate increase by the end of 2023. That was up from 7 in March. Of those 13, 11 of them saw at least 2 increases by the end of 2023. And as for even earlier than that, 7 of the 18 saw a move up in rates in 2022. That's up from 4 in March. We won't go through all the details, but generally raising interest rates has a negative impact towards sentiment, at least, of growth stocks. So most stocks, including the tech-heavy Nasdaq, did drop off after that news was released. But after Fed Chairman Jerome Powell made his comments and basically said that there's still a lot of uncertainty around the timing of a possible rate increase, they're still looking to support the economy, and that the expectations in the past have not been a great forecaster of future rate moves, and that liftoff of those interest rates is well off into the future. After making those comments, the markets bounced off of their session lows. Tesla followed a similar path throughout the day, but bounced back even a little bit higher. So nice to see that relative strength. I certainly wouldn't have been surprised if things had gone the other way based on what we had heard from the Fed today. All right, moving on from macro, we've got a couple interesting tweets here from Elon Musk. First, he started off by talking about the new heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system in the Plaid Model S. This was in reply to a tweet from Tesla Raj demonstrating how quiet the interior of the Model S is, noting that even though they're in a loud shop, when you close the doors of the vehicle, all you can hear at that point is just the HVAC for the Model S. So that's meant as a compliment, but Elon replied to that saying, quote, "New HVAC firmware coming soon that will make it quieter," end quote. Which of course led to a question about a Tesla home HVAC system, which Elon has mentioned in the past as something he'd be excited to do. Elon replied to that question saying, quote, "Oh man, home HVAC that is super energy efficient, quiet, and purifies the air would be great. We developed it for the car, but it can be scaled up for home use," end quote. He then added a couple of tweets saying, quote, "Most people have no idea just how good the Tesla air purification system is, literally 10x better than any other car. Maybe we should advertise informationally just so people know stuff like this exists," end quote. So, there we go. One of the most divisive topics in the Tesla community, whether or not Tesla should advertise. We've talked about the HVAC stuff more recently than we have advertising, so not much new to add to that. I think if Tesla did a product like that, it would obviously be very exciting. But on the advertising front, obviously, Tesla hasn't gone down that path, and Elon Musk has said negative things about advertising in the past, but he has said some positive things. He has expressed open-mindedness as well. So here is a response to a question that he was asked during the 2019 annual shareholder meeting, so about 2 years ago. The person asking the question framed it as being a response to all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is obviously a relevant topic for what we've been talking about over the last couple of months here, but he was just suggesting that advertising could be a possible way to combat the effects of FUD. So here's about 90 seconds of Elon's response after he had already noted that obviously Tesla was production constrained, so didn't feel like advertising under that circumstance made a lot of sense. Here is what he said following that comment.
And I think like advertising, like generally, like I have not, I've had an aversion to advertising because there's like, it's just too much trickery in advertising. There's just like, there's a lot of false association, whereas like they'll have like a bad product and then, put it in a nice environment with good-looking people and then like trick you into buying it is like common, and then some of the advertising can be quite strident, so it just tends to be sort of bad. So I don't like advertising for that reason. But we could have advertising as information to refute some of these issues. It's tricky though, because if you have an ad that says, "Look, our cars don't catch on fire," this is BS. Then people might think, "Are your cars actually catching on fire? Like, what's what's going on?" Because there's so much trickery in advertising. Like maybe the opposite thing is happening. Well, I wouldn't say that we're against advertising forever. But it hasn't been necessary thus far, and Yeah, so, yeah.
So I think some good points there from Elon. I kind of had to laugh at the fire stuff as well, but this has been a hotly contested subject. On one hand, you have, okay, if Tesla's production constrained, doesn't make sense to put money into advertising. Elon has also said in the past that every dollar you put towards advertising is a dollar you can't put into the product. Tesla would just prefer to put every resource they have available into the product and trust that the best product wins over time. Both great arguments, but on the other hand, you've got people saying, hey, there's all this FUD out there, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Certainly at times that seems to be having a negative impact on Tesla. If Tesla were to advertise, maybe that can directly curtail some of those narratives and also prevent media from being so egregious in terms of spreading those things if they're getting a little bit of ad revenue from Tesla, which, yes, does feel a little bit extortionate, but also could be the case. I think the balance of those things has always put me in a relatively neutral camp around Tesla potentially advertising. I think mostly I've just encouraged open-mindedness to not rule the topic out. And I don't think it's as simple as people often make it, in the same way that we talk about demand not being as simple as people like to try to make it either. Demand is a series of distributions across geography, across seasonality, and across the price band, and companies have to balance across those distributions to make optimal decisions for the company. There are countless examples of how companies optimize for these things. A couple of great examples in Tesla's case, first being when Tesla decides to do a production shutdown. That's often in Q1. That's intentional, that's the lowest demand quarter. And then second case being when Tesla decides to expand into new countries. That carries significant costs. Tesla has to build infrastructure, they have to build stores, service, supercharging. It probably adds time and cost to be able to get vehicles to that new country from their factories. So if they had unlimited demand in, for example, California, why not just sell that car in California? Well, it's a balance of pricing, what they can get in California versus in this new market. It's a balance of building that market for the future. Tons of things to consider, but really at the end of the day, it comes down to managing your demand to be in line with your production, and then maximizing the value that you can get off that level of demand, otherwise known as your profit. Advertising is simply another tool that Tesla has available to them to help manage that equation. I just hate approaching it with sort of binary thinking of advertising being purely good or purely bad. There's so much along the spectrum, even in terms of how you do the advertising, whether it's the content itself or the channel. I think we'd all agree if we saw Tesla ads that looked exactly like BMW ads or something like that, that'd probably be a bad use of resources. But I think Tesla can do a lot of other different things that are interesting that could not only help the business, but could actually help people learn something. This is why I tweeted at Elon yesterday in response to that tweet saying, I think it's worth at least testing out. Tesla doesn't have to advertise in a traditional manner. Tesla already does spend money on marketing, so drawing a line around advertising feels a little bit arbitrary. And I know Tesla loves word of mouth, as they should. That is an excellent way to build the business, but it is limited in terms of its reach. It would be great if everybody talked and listened to everybody else, but unfortunately that is just not the reality. I'm not convinced that the world is becoming more fragmented, but certainly at times it does feel that way. Relying on word of mouth alone then relies on some overlap between those fragments or between those circles. If your circle happens to have someone that has a Tesla, that's great, and obviously that group is growing. But it's truly shocking, and I tweeted this as well, it's truly shocking how poorly informed most people are about Tesla out there and its products, even in tech-savvy, well-educated, high-income groups. People just don't get it. I have had people, friends of mine, mind you, I, for my job, do Tesla daily. These people are in my social group. People have literally asked me if my car has an engine and if it takes gas. So just imagine people that don't happen to know someone that has a Tesla. They certainly aren't going to know that Tesla makes the safest cars in their respective categories across the board. Even for those that may know an owner, you're then kind of relying on that owner to be able to properly articulate what makes the product great, and some people are just not going to be all that great at doing that. So look, at the end of the day, this is not an argument that Tesla certainly should advertise. I just think it's something that should be considered, not ruled out just based on the stigmatization of advertising being bad or misleading or annoying or even expensive, because while it can be certainly all of those things all at once, it does not have to be that way. So again, not saying Tesla should go out and buy every 30-second ad slot on CNBC for the entire year, but maybe at least start having the conversation of, hey, if we were going to do an advertisement, what would that look like in, for lack of a better term, the Tesla way? And for those of you out there still grinding your teeth saying, Tesla's production constraint doesn't make sense, well, think about mix. If Tesla were able to advertise and then sell more higher priced variants because of more demand, it's not hard to imagine a scenario where that would make up more than the cost of the advertising itself. Super quick example, for easiness sake, let's say Tesla sells 1 million vehicles this year. They spend $50 per vehicle on ads, $50 million. If that pushed Tesla's demand up to the point where they could swap out, let's say, 5,000 Model 3 Standard Range Plus vehicles for 5,000 performance level vehicles, which would only be 1 to 2% of Model 3 orders, Tesla would already come out ahead from that scenario on revenue and on profit. Now, those are just example numbers. I don't really know what the spend or the return would be, but kind of the point is that Tesla doesn't really either because they haven't tried it. Maybe it could have helped Tesla sell more Model S and X vehicles when those fell off from peak production rates. All right, I think I've said my piece on that. Hopefully it's clear. I'm sure someone in the comments, as usual, will misinterpret what I've said there, but I think I've belabored it enough. So let's move on to the next topic, that is supercharging. A couple of items here. First is a comment from Germany's Federal Minister of Transportation on Tesla supercharging, saying, quote, "I am in direct contact with manufacturers such as Tesla to ensure that the existing infrastructure, for example Tesla Supercharger, is also opened for other manufacturers," end quote. So of course this is something that Elon Musk has expressed openness to in the past, but it sounds like they may be starting to get some political pressure towards that. Perhaps that had played a role in a rumor leak detail that we had heard from a company call a couple months back, where apparently Tesla's working on opening up the supercharger network with an adapter plus an app, or maybe Tesla was already moving in that direction. Anyway, since that call, I haven't heard any more details around that rumor. According to ecomento.de, the federal minister said that there are still technical challenges to be clarified, but he expects a solution to be found. So we'll keep an eye out for anything more on that. Definitely some interesting implications, which I think I'll discuss in another episode. Next here is a very interesting data point on the Model S Plaid. This is from Manic Marge on Twitter, and the photo here shows a Plaid Model S being charged at a 34% state of charge at 246 kilowatts. So what's the big deal if we already know that the refreshed S can charge at 250 kilowatts? Well, the state of charge there is the critical thing to pay attention to. If we look at the taper curve for the Model 3, a couple graphs here from Clean Technica and from Inside EVs, generally the Model 3 has tapered down from that peak 250 kilowatt rate at somewhere around a 23% state of charge. By the time you get to 34% state of charge, the rates have fallen off, depending on which graph you're looking at here, to somewhere between maybe 140 kilowatts to 210. So it's really exciting and encouraging to see that taper starting later for the new Model S. Hopefully someone will record that whole curve soon. But in terms of time spent charging, that taper curve can be just as important or even more important than the peak rate. So I was very excited to see that. Next here, just an update on Gigaberland. I misspoke a little bit yesterday, so I said there was a 1-month period of time for review once the new application documents are published this Friday. Turns out there's a 1-month period of time for review and then 1-month period of time for objections after that. So yes, that does actually add up to 2 months. August 16th, the deadline there that I mentioned yesterday, is 2 months away, since right now it's June 16th. So thank you to those of you that politely pointed that out in the comments yesterday. I just wanted to correct on that. Next here, some news from GM. Reuters is reporting this morning that GM will be boosting their investment into electric and autonomous vehicles by 30% through 2025, up to $35 billion. And according to Reuters sources, they intend to build 2 additional US battery plants as part of that spending and move up some of their EV investments. So good for GM. On the contrasting side of that, one of Toyota's directors today at their annual shareholder meeting, in response to an investor question, saying that he thinks it is too early to concentrate on one option in terms of powertrains, saying that in the years leading up to 2050, different options, including hybrids and fuel cell vehicles, need to compete against each other so that the company is left with the best options. As a reminder, Tesla Daily is a family-friendly program, so I will bite my tongue and move on to the next topic here, which is Waymo. Following the departures of their CEO, CFO, and head of automotive partnerships, Waymo has now raised a fresh round of funding, $2.5 billion from parent company Alphabet and other investors. They say they'll use the latest round of funding to, quote, continue advancing the Waymo driver, as well as continuing to grow our team, end quote. The valuation of the round is unknown. Last year they did a round at a rumored $30 billion valuation, which was lower than what analysts had expected. So if I see anything on a different valuation, I will let you know, but that is it for today. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Thursday, June 17th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.